Welcome back to the Fantasy Network, everyone. My name is, of course, Jimmy Nuts, and we're going to be doing something different today, something I've never done, but it's an idea I've had for a bit, and it's all about beginnings of books, how I interpret what a book is trying to give to me out of that first page, but also my interest. Every single book that I order or go pick up from a bookstore, almost all of them, especially in recent months, I read the first page, I get it, even if I don't plan to read it for a very long time. And that first page tells us quite a bit about a book. It tells us whether or not we're going to be hooked right from the get-go. It's going to be a bit of a slower burn. Obviously, first impressions are really everything, not just in life, but in entertainment. I love the beginnings of books. I'm a beginning person. Endings have always been a good thing, sometimes a bad thing, but never the biggest deciding factor. There's exceptions to this, of course. So welcome to the very first episode of One Bite Book Review, where I will be reading the first page of 3 books randomly selected by Mrs. Nuts. I am not aware of what these books are. She actually just went to our library with all of her unread books and said, here are 3 that I want you to try the first page of. I will rate the book, well, the book's first page, out of 10, give my thoughts on it, and then decide whether or not it's going to go on my immediate TBR, meaning that like within the next week or so, I would start it. Even if I don't end up loving a first page, doesn't mean I won't read the book. It just means that a really great opening is going to catapult it probably to the front of the TBR. So I have a bag of books down here next to me. I have not looked at these books. Mrs. Nuts picked them at random, like I said. So I'm going to pull one out. I'm going to show you what it is, and then I'm going to read the first page and give you my thoughts. So without any further ado, let's take a gander, and we have, okay, this is an author that I have never read anything from. They're extraordinarily popular, polarizing too, which most popular authors are very polarizing. In love with this cover. I don't know if I'm going to be in love with the book, and that is Starter Villain by John Scalzi. I know exactly when we bought this. It was during the Barnes & Noble buy one, get one 50% off sale that they were around the holidays, probably 2 years, 3 years ago at this point, whenever this book came out. And it was strictly a cover buy for Mrs. Nuts. She doesn't know anything about John Scalzi. She just saw a cat and was like, I gotta have it. So I'm going to read the first page of this, and I'll probably maybe show myself reading for a little bit. I don't know, but I'll cut back and give you my thoughts. So I have read my very first page of John Scalzi ever. It is from a first-person perspective, has a pretty strong hook for the opening line. I learned about the death of my Uncle Jake in a deeply unexpected way, which was from CNBC's Squawk Box morning show. Pretty good hook, I would say. I'm kind of curious of what's going on, but the protagonist here is recollecting something in the first-person past tense, obviously, and then goes on to kind of describe why they used to watch this show all the time and how it's not important anymore because they're a substitute teacher. So it seems like there's a bit of a fall from grace. And then in the very ending piece of that, after he kind of explains all of that and why he's watching and what he's hearing on the news, we end up getting a really, really long sentence that, I mean, just continuously goes on, a comma here, comma, 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 comma. And it's to build some sort of tension till we find out exactly how his uncle has died, which is of pancreatic cancer at the age of 67. And then immediately follows it up with a brand new paragraph talking about how he says, are you hearing this, to his breakfast partner, which was not his wife, Janine, because she was no longer his wife and no longer living with him. So just from the opening pages, I'm wondering if our starter villain, the villain arc, is beginning from this point. Seems like someone has fallen from grace. So is our protagonist actually going to be an antagonist? Kind of curious about that. The writing was very straightforward. It seemed pretty refined. It wasn't anything crazy special. There's no sentences there that blew my mind, but it certainly moved at a pretty decent pace for as much as a page can. And I'm a little bit curious of why this fall of grace happened. I would say that's the number one thing I got from this. Not blown away by it, but a little bit intrigued. What would I give this out of 10? Out of 10, one page, I would give this opening probably a solid 5 out of 10. I think it's just fine. It's not offensive. There's a small amount of intrigue, which I think is the minimum expectations of a first page. I'm kind of making up my own grading scale as I go. Certainly not a bad opening. I am curious. I don't know if I'm as curious as I would like to be to continue. This is not going to go on the immediate TBR. And that is something important to note. I might get through all 3 of these and maybe none of them get, the nut button. Maybe none of them get the nut button and get put on the immediate TBR. This one's not. Maybe the next 2 will. Okay, next book out of the bag. Now, I haven't seen these, so I hope one of these actually ends up working out. Oh, God. Okay, so the problem with my library is that I share it with Mrs. Nuts. And Mrs. Nuts has very different tastes than me. And this happens to be one of those books, which is the Ruinous Love Trilogy. Book 1 being Butcher and Blackbird, which has a bunch of edgy symbols like chainsaw, butcher knife, skulls. This is by Breen? I don't know. I sound like Roy Detrice trying to narrate A Song of Ice and Fire. Weaver. So B. Weaver. I've heard this book is ridiculous from Mrs. Nuts. That's the only thing I know about it. And she says that it's extraordinarily cringe at moments, I believe. So let's read this first page. I do not have high hopes at all. Okay, so I read the first page, which was even shorter than the Scalzi one, and it's from a POV of Sloane. I assume there's going to be multiple POVs in this book, and it opens up with a line, and I'm not going to read every opening line, but as long as they're catchy and short, I mean, there's no harm in really reading them. Being a serial killer who kills serial killers is a great hobby until you find yourself locked in a cage for 3 days with a dead body in the Louisiana summer with no air conditioning. I glare at the fly-riddled corpse line. Okay, so you kind of get it, right? Short, terse, impactful sentences. This book is coming out and not at all pretending to be something it is not. And I can actually guarantee you that because there's an entire list of content and trigger warnings. And I only read like 2 of them because I want to get right to the first page. I also do not read, unless if I have prior knowledge, I am not in the moment looking at synopsis, reading the back of the book or anything. So I'm kind of guessing what the book's going to be about. This one seems obvious. There's edginess to all of this. There's edginess in the first page. I would imagine that based on those little sentences that I read to you, you would know whether this is going to be something for you or not. I will say this. Something that is unapologetically itself is something I admire, even whenever it's not my thing. I don't think this is going to be my thing. This seems extraordinarily edgy. And lately, I've been running into that more and more and more. There's nothing wrong with edgy, by the way. There are people who enjoy edgy. I think it can rub you the wrong way, just as like live, laugh, and love banners in a home can make me feel uncomfortable. Like those are different sides of the spectrum, but kind of the same feeling. So I'm not criticizing just because it's edgy, but I'm not going to put it on the immediate TBR, certainly, because I'm kind of worn out by this. I keep seeing more and more edge in books that I keep picking up. Maybe that says something about me. I'm not sure, but I'm certainly not in the mood to read something like this. But as a first page, there's enjoyment, and then there's what I think is effectiveness. It's telling you kind of what it is right out of the gate. It is interesting. 3 days with the dead body locked in a cage in a Louisiana summer, that swamp atmosphere, we're already building up setting and a bit of feeling there. I don't think that this is necessarily bad. It's striking and blunt, but that's not that's not bad. I think that you're kind of getting what you see here. So I am going to give this, it's hard because I have to rate this little bit of my enjoyment, but also if I think it's effective, you might read that and say, hey, I got to read the next page. But I think for my ratings, I have to go with how interesting did I find the first page, independently of whether or not I want to complete it, but also kind of letting that come in here. We're making this up as we go, folks, okay? You're along for the ride. I will give this a 5.2 because I think that if I were to look at the Scalzi book and I would say which one of these would I want to continue immediately based off the first page, it's this one, just because it's insane. Which book do I think I would like more? Probably the Scalzi book. Do I think I would like either of them? I'm not so sure. I don't know if Mrs. Nuts is going to be upset with me for saying her book was edgy and kind of cringe, but here we are. The lot's riding on this last book for this first episode to actually have a winner. The final book in the bag. Let's take a gander. This is humongous. Okay. It's one of the biggest books I own. Why do people always want me to read big books? Why can't I ever just get a nice short book? It's The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. The Priory of the Orange Tree. So this was a big epic tome, right, that came out for epic fantasy. I see some people who really love it for kind of bucking back against just the typical things, but I have also heard that its biggest sin is that it's just not as interesting as someone would want it to be. I will say this, the cover's fantastic. The title is absolutely fantastic, but is the first page fantastic? That remains to be seen. I don't know anything other than the fact that it's kind of an epic. Biggest thing is, with a book this size, especially with my mood of revolting against mostly larger books, this first page has to knock my socks off to get this on my immediate TBR. I can't say every book here is going to be on the TBR. I don't think either of those two are going to make it, to be honest. Maybe this one will. Let's see. Okay, this one's a weird one. I'm actually flipping to the front real quick because I want to see something. So it does say there's a map at the beginning of this book of being a big epic fantasy. I was assuming so. There's also some dragons pictures here, which is kind of neat. Don't know if you can see these, but cool map, cool dragons. Empire of the 12 Lakes. So this is appearing to be a secondary world, but the weird thing is before I got to the first page, you have this little like epigraph, and I did read it, and it's Revelation 20, chapter 20, verses 1-3 out of the Christian Bible. And that to me is interesting because are we in some sort of like post-rapture world? Because this is all about an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. It goes on after that, but it's talking about the abyss, right? We hear about like these ghosts, these old like sea ghosts that are coming, or water ghosts actually is what they're called, coming out, and they have like shriveled tongues. They're messed up. But it says that they would lurk in the shadows, waiting to drag the unwary to the heart of the abyss. So we have the abyss from Revelation, and now we're in a secondary world. Maybe it's Earth, and someone's getting dragged into the abyss. So my mind's going, okay, is this the abyss from Revelation? Are we in a world that's on that other side of that abyss? Like, what if it's a hole and we're in like the other side of that, like a black hole or something? I don't know. I'm going a little insane. I am not loving the writing. It's not terrible, but I kind of I had to reread some stuff like 1 or 2 times, not because it's super dense or anything, but just there's something about the rhythm of it that is not meshing with me. It's not terrible or anything. Tane is the character that's introduced. And basically by the end of the first page, there's a great question of like, she is seeing this outsider coming in who she thought she was a ghost, and that she has seen his sin and he's seeing hers, or like their faults or something. I can't exactly remember the phrasing, but so she's doing something wrong, but so is this outsider that's coming in who speaks a different language. I will say having this person like crawl out of the water looking like a ghost is kind of intriguing, speaking a totally different language. So this is probably a pretty vast, big world. I would hope so with all these pages. Wasn't in love with the opening writing bits. I don't know if this is Samantha Shannon's first book. I'm not sure, so I can't give her any leeway without knowing that. But I will say, reading a book that size, maybe I would settle into the writing style maybe a quarter or halfway through, but at the very jump, there's just something about it that's very awkward to me, especially whenever it came to describing things. It just didn't feel as smooth, right? I think the other two, one was very blunt, so it's hard to get that wrong. Scalzi, pretty refined, but vanilla, I would say. This here, it feels like it's trying to do something a little bit more with the writing. It would catch on later. So I'm not saying the writing's bad. I'm just saying for me, it felt a little bit awkward. I just wasn't able to sink into it as much. I am very interested about biblical revelation being involved, possibly. I love the idea of like a post-revelation Earth that has now become a secondary world. Love that. That's like one of my favorite things. I know a lot of people are tired of that, seeing that in fantasy or sci-fi. Not this guy. Love it. Any kind of post-apocalyptic, post-rapture, whatever. I'm here for it. I mean, I read the Left Behind series whenever I was a teenager. Do y'all remember how bad? Like at the time, I thought Left Behind was awesome, but man, it was so bad. It was so bad. I am a fantasy reader, a huge fantasy reader. I think that this book is actually my favorite page 1, even if the writing to me wasn't flowing. I'm going to be a bit of a hard judge here. I'm going to give Priory of the Orange Tree a 5.5. So increments of mediocrity, not a great way of starting a new show here on the Fantasy Network, but I just got to rate it for what it is. And I certainly don't want to come out too high. If anything, maybe I'm rating these too high. I don't know. We're going to see a lot of page 1s in this series. It's safe to say this is not going on my immediate TBR, but it's definitely still in the TBR. I'm interested by the premise, just given what I know. I didn't read any sort of synopsis or anything for it, so it could be about something totally different. Revelation never comes back up. The abyss is just a one-word drop. Who knows? That gives me some interest. I think the next time I'm in a mood for a big fantasy chunker, willing to take a risk, this could go on that list, but it's not making the immediate TBR, which concludes all 3 books. Which got, I think it was a 5, a 5.2, and what did I give this? A 5.5, 5.6, something like that. It's in the 5s, right? But hey, 1 page, everybody knows the rules. These books certainly could develop into something completely different, change my opinion of them as they go on, but those are my first impressions. And also, I'm kind of giving you a little bit of an insight about when I get a book or I read a sample before I buy it, how I kind of judge these things and what I'm thinking about. Also, it's just kind of a lot of fun. There's been no nut buttons. There's been no buttons this episode, but I'm sure that they will come in due time. Did you like this? Do you have recommendations? I mean, I don't have to be surprised by them each and every time, but I could do some recommendations from the comments down below. So leave a comment below if you have a book that you think I should absolutely read to page 1 from. You get 1 page, and that's it to make it to the top of my TBR. That is a mountain. This is a fun idea, fun experiment. If you like it, show your support for this idea by hitting like. You can hit subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. I plan on doing a few more of these very soon, and I'm very excited about that because this is actually quite fun. If you disliked the video, you can hit dislike, and if you loved it and you want to support the channel, there's a Patreon in the description. It's optional, but always appreciated. Until we see you next time, be good, be safe, and remember to always keep turning the page. I want to give a big shout out to all my patrons who do support the channel, especially my Kingsguard, which include 406 Raider, Brenda V, David V, Andre D, Curran, Meta, Kuiper, Damon, Joseph, Slay, K Fox the Great, Stromboli Bones, Robert M, Bridger, Amel, Jonathan J, Prithvi, Mark J, Eric Blinn, Caitlin S, Chadia, Taylor D, Matthias, Adam K, Social Teist, Carlos, Yolanda, JB, John C, John, Garrick, Lucas, Benjamin, Sebastian, Frank, C. Scott, Boss, Jacob Wade, Darren, Jobot, Terrence, Michael, Lauren, Nicholas, Kai, Kev, Ryan, Jay, Zan, Shad, Amanda V, Raincentric, RJ, Oscar, and Derry. Thank you all so very much. You are the best.